perhaps the key paradox in life is the fact that to attain effortless non-action requires superhuman effort, sustained perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, constancy, and absolute dedication. Ask any musician who becomes a virtuoso and who seems to play effortlessly how much effort they put into it, how many years of study to be able to play in such an effortless manner that it entrances us with impossible beauty. Ask any great sports figure who becomes great and seemingly effortlessly achieves goals that no one else could do. Ask any great actor, artist of any kind, composer, thinker, how much effort it goes into learning how to think before true thought becomes effortless. But how much more so when the goal is union with God? Which requires an ultimate and total effort of your very being to deliver yourself from the illusion that your ego is into the truth of your being. And deliverance is always self-deliverance. And this particular art, the art of divine living, is different from any other art. Because it requires crossing the barrier between the phenomenal plane and the noumenal. Every other art simply requires effort within the phenomenal realm. But this requires traversing the diaphanon, the membrane between the classical world and the quantum unified field, to use those terms. But to traverse from this loka of apparently gross matter to that highest abode, Paramdham it's called in Sanskrit, the abode of God. And not only do you have to cope with the difficulty of the task, but with your own fear of achieving it. There are many people who pretend they have a fear of death. They don't. It's a disguised form of fear of life. And it's out of the fear of life that someone will prefer to choose a dead life, a life in hiding, a life buffered by medicines or alcohol or drugs of some kind. Fearful of leading a life of following their true heart's desire and their calling to greatness. and preferring to remain small and secure. And in that they are avoiding not only their own greatness, but that very possibility of leading a divine life. And so a dead life is chosen. A self-strangled life. When one has the courage to recognize that it's always the fear of life that's the issue. But I mean full living, not half living. Then one has to ask, what is it about life or death? Because ultimately the two are the same. That creates such fear. And those who claim to have fear of death, what is it about death that you fear? It's about not being able any longer to flee from the presence of God. Because here we can deny God. We can say, I don't understand God, I don't believe in God, I don't care about God. Just my narcissistic ego, and think that can be gotten away with. But in death it can't be done. Can't hide. Can't run away. Have no control. And if God calls you, you must go. But what is it about the presence of God that is so fearful? It's God's love. It's love that we fear. Everyone thinks that that's all I want is love, but it's not true. There's a difference between hunger and thirst on a symbolic level. Hunger is for the gross matter, whether it's food or it's lust for groping bodies or it's some other very visceral, meaty enjoyment. But that hunger is always to fill an emptiness with something solid, to make you feel like you exist, to give you more weight, literally, more gravitas, to make your existence palpable because you're afraid of blowing away in the wind, because you realize your ego is too lacking in substance. And so you want to ground yourself. And you want to fill your emptiness by consuming that which becomes poison to you. Mostly people die of their hunger. Not of being hungry, but of satisfying their hunger in the wrong way. Eating too much food, the wrong kind. Just to run away from the emptiness that is our real being. Just to run away from the feeling of being alive. We'd rather be full and aching than alive with the vibrancy of pure energy that is unobstructed. We even hate our own prana. That's why we cut it. And then we need to hire an acupuncturist to help reconnect it. But prana is nothing compared to the direct, divine, luminous Shakti. And human love, that really we don't want, we just want submission, acquiescence, empty affirmations, possession, control, power over the other. Security has nothing to do with love. So even human love we forsake. And usually when people do come together, it's only for the purpose of keeping each other in a cage. And to have them there without relating to them lovingly. That's what most marriages are. They're inert, cold wars of non-relationship. And the same is true when we meditate. In fact, infinitely more true, because the love that we dare to encounter is far more than we're able to handle. If you can't gaze into someone's eyes lovingly, how are you going to gaze into the eyes of God and feel the caress of God? How are you going to stand the power of God's love? How can your illusory self endure through the touch of the supreme real? It can't. And that's why it's said that you cannot see the face of God and live. But it's the ego that cannot live. And it's seeing the face of God that brings us to real life. The real life that is the death of the ego and the opening to absolute love. And that's what we run away from. And that's why we fail ourselves. And that's why we choose the darkness over the light. If you've ever asked yourself when you meditate and you reach a moment of silence, why does your mind keep popping out of that silence back into chatter? Why doesn't it stay in the silence? Because you know that if you stay in the silence for any length of time, you will begin to feel the presence of God. And it terrifies you. And if you stay long enough that presence becomes luminous, and you can actually feel yourself being encompassed and filled with God's love, there becomes a rush of anxiety. Because you know that it is death that is coming on. Because death is love, nothing else. But love in its purest form, that's so different than human love. It's like a coca leaf compared to cocaine. It's too powerful. And so when you meditate and you begin to really open yourself to silence, and allow the energy of love to flow into your heart, it flows in like liquid gold, like nectar. Like the most exquisite taste you have ever imagined being able to receive on your tongue. But you're receiving it directly in your heart. And yet it causes exquisite pain. And why? Because the cells of your body suddenly learn firsthand how thirsty they have been all your life for love. And the pain of that thirst which you had successfully repressed now has to be felt to the full. And the realization that comes with it, that the reason you hadn't felt God's love is that we have rejected it. Not that God has been absent or rejecting us or refusing to give us grace. No, that's all a lie. But because we know that that love will dissolve the ego lie forever, will dissolve the lie that we are bodies, will turn our bodies to light, will turn our minds into our hearts and become pure love. And it is the fear of that love, destroying the ego and its defense mechanisms and its aggressive power and all of its desires for control, and take away all of its hungers and its enjoyments of gratifying those hungers with inappropriate delights of a carnivorous, vampiric kind. It will destroy all that. It will destroy our blindness to the fact that we have been living for that and not for the love of God. That becomes too much truth to handle. And so when I share truth with people, they say, "Where's the love?" But if I give the love to people, they will prefer the words. They will prefer theories. They will prefer a distance. They will prefer to remain in ignorance of their own contraction away from love. And so the art of living, real living, divine living, is the art of learning to endure love. Until we are so saturated with love that we become love. And that love itself destroys our fear and makes us real and makes us beacons of love, transmitters, who for the first time have something to give. Because for the first time we are. And so spiritual life doesn't begin until we have become so saturated with love that the quest for love and the running away from love have ended. In becoming such a filled receptacle of love that we overflow with love for anyone and everyone unconditionally, without wanting anything in return. And that love is so satisfying that there is no more hunger for anything. No more fear of anything. No more desire to be anything. And it's only when every cell of the body overflows with that love, and every impulse of the mind is that of a sharing of love and of healing with love. That one can truly become sensitive to the nature of the world. Because you sense with your power of love. Not the five senses. They see only surfaces. But it's love which sees into the depth of everyone's being. Love alone is vision. And love alone is the ability to reach into the heart of all and to offer even one precious drop of the Amrita that can save one's soul. And sometimes to open the heart of the other requires wrenching away the defense mechanisms, sometimes forcibly, to shake one sufficiently that there is a gap in their armoring and they can receive that love. So love cannot always be gentle. But love is always true when it comes from God. And it always heals. And we are brought here to this world to become healers who operate with the medicine of love. And no other medicine is needed. If we can transmit that medicine in its pure form. And do so wisely, egolessly, with complete purity of heart. And we all want that. And the paradox is we run away from that which we most deeply and earnestly desire to be. And the moment we stop running away, we will know that all along, that is all we have ever been, is that pure love.